The late round prospect guide is now published. It's out there. For those of you who pre-ordered the guide, you've already gotten it emailed to your inbox. For those of you who haven't bought it yet, you can still do so over on lateround.com for $14.99. The guide consists of a breakdown of my prospect and year 2 models. It talks through some new terms that should help you out with your rookie evaluations. It has 76 running back and wide receiver profiles on players in this year's class, and it includes 25 year 2 profiles as well. In total, the thing is over 130 pages long. I put a lot into it, and I just need a second to chill. So instead of a brand new late round podcast episode today, I'm doing what I did a couple of years ago and giving you guys a rewind. The episode you're about to hear is one from last February on how rookies appreciate in value. I think it's an important one to keep in mind this time of year. I looked at dynastyleaguefootball.com's ADP data, and I analyzed it to see what happens to player values from year 1 to year 2. And I explained how the data should change your approach in Dynasty. I trimmed up the original audio from that show, so you guys are only going to get the important stuff. This rewind is just a 1-week thing. I'll be back with a fresh mailbag episode on Friday, and then I'll have a new episode for you early next week too. As always, thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting me as I continue down this road of being independent. Without further ado, here's the episode on how rookies appreciate in value. I'll sometimes get feedback from people who ask me to do more shows around Dynasty formats, and I think it's valid feedback. I just can't necessarily focus a huge chunk of my energy to Dynasty on this podcast because the audience is largely a redraft one, and redraft also has a larger audience in general. But when the season comes to a close and when things slow down, I'm able to fire off some Dynasty-related episodes, and this is one of them. Before I go on, I know a lot of you don't play Dynasty formats. That's totally cool and fine. I understand this episode won't totally hit for you. But if you're not a Dynasty player, all the way back in 2018, I did an episode with the great Ryan McDowell of Dynasty League Football where we covered the basics of Dynasty Fantasy Football. That's episode 111. Ryan's an awesome analyst. I play in a lot of leagues with him, and I can tell you guys that he's one of the best out there at the game. But I play in a good number of Dynasty leagues now, and I have been for a handful of years. And like redraft, my strategy is constantly evolving. And I would say that it's evolved a lot more on the Dynasty front than the redraft one since I started playing. One thing that's very obvious in Dynasty is that the market is incredibly important to understand. More so than your regular redraft league. I stress understanding the market all the time on this show. But there's even more to it when we're talking Dynasty. Because you're not just looking at the market and saying, this is where this player is getting drafted. You're looking at the market and you're saying, this is where the player is getting drafted, and then this is where this player is going to be drafted in the future. You have to understand appreciation. You've got to grasp how players or how positions change in value over time. Some Dynasty players, they're amazing at this. To the point where it doesn't even matter if they're hitting on players at a higher rate than their competition. They just know when to buy and sell. I won't pretend that I'm that Dynasty player. I'm admittedly a better redraft player than a Dynasty one, but I approach both formats in a similar way, through math and logic. The thing is, when looking at how players appreciate in value, it's not just a game about how good those players necessarily are. It's not just based on whether a player is good or not. Like, of course, good players will gain value and bad ones will lose value over time. There's a little bit more to it, though, and I want to touch on that a little bit on today's show. I want to show you guys through data how rookies appreciate in value in Dynasty formats. I really approach this topic with the question of what happens to rookies when looking at their value in startup drafts from year 1 to year 2. Because if they almost always gain value, then why would you not just punt for a season and get that value for your team from one year to the next? And anecdotally, it does seem like that generally happens. But I wanted the data to speak, not just my random experience. So like I said, I was curious to see what happens to a rookie's startup average draft position, his startup ADP, after his rookie season, to compare how a rookie's value changed from before year 1 to before year 2. To help me out, I utilized dynastyleaguefootball.com's average draft position data. You guys should all check out DLF because it's a great resource and the people running it are also great people. I went through their ADP, which dates back to 2014. To me, looking at ADP at least gives us some idea of value, right? It's how people are valuing these players when they're drafting them. I then realized that I wanted to make what I was doing a little bit more consumable for you guys. So I had to cross-reference this startup ADP data with rookie draft ADP that I've compiled from myfantasyleague.com. So we've got Dynasty League Football Startup ADP, and we've got MyFantasyLeague.com Rookie Draft ADP. Our rookie sample is in the My Fantasy League ADP, and I'm seeing how those rookies changed in startup ADP from year 1 to year 2. Since we're looking at data from 2014 onward, that means that there were 6 rookie drafts worth of data within our sample where we've got next season data. So 2014 through 2019 with 12 players picked per round in a 12-team league. That means that we've got 72 first-round picks and 72 second-round picks in our sample, because 6 years times 12 players per round equals 72 total picks. Now, hypothetically, we should have 72 third-round picks and 72 fourth-round picks as well. That's not the case, though. Since I'm using rookie draft data and I'm cross-referencing it to the startup data to understand how value changes, not all third and fourth-round rookies actually had an average draft position in startup drafts. According to the numbers, 63 third-rounders had startup value, and then 41 fourth-rounders had startup value. I then stopped at the 4th round because our sample would just be getting smaller and smaller as we move down rookie drafts. I'm also going to focus heavily on the higher end players for today's show. So let me recap what's going on here. It's important to wrap your head around the methodology. We've got 6 years of rookie draft ADP data that we're looking at, and we're looking at just the first 4 rounds of rookie drafts. Since not all of those rookie picks have startup ADPs to cross-reference, it's not a data set that's simply 6 years times 12 picks per round times 4 rounds. It's not 288 total rookies that we're analyzing. It's a little bit less than that at 248. These 248 rookies are our sample that we're working with. What we're trying to figure out is, how did these rookies change in value from one year to the next? I'm going to start by looking at straight up round drafted. As you'd guess, round 1 rookies and rookie drafts have a higher hit rate than round 2 rookies, meaning round 1 players tend to end up being better than round 2 ones, because they're better players and we're not totally horrendous at evaluating. If you look at our sample of first-round players, we've got 72 of them, since every rookie that was drafted in round 1 also had startup ADP. Of those 72 rookies, about 52% of them saw their startup ADP get better from year 1 to year 2. As of right now, that 52% number, that really shouldn't mean anything to you because we're not comparing it to anything. Is 52% good or bad? We don't know. We have no idea. Meanwhile, in round 2, a solid 54 to 55% of round 2 rookies have seen their startup ADP rise from year 1 to year 2. And by the way, keep in mind that some round 1 rookie draft players, they have high startup ADPs to begin with. So sometimes it's really hard to increase that value. But that doesn't totally matter just yet because we're looking at this in a binary, did this player gain value way. When you get to round 3, things aren't as strong. 40% of our round 3 samples saw their value increase year over year, whereas 42% in round 4 saw their value increase. So at a high level, this tells us that a random first or second round rookie pick, they're likely to see an increase in value year over year, an increase in startup ADP. That's not that big of a surprise. We all value first and second round rookie picks a lot more than third and fourth rounders. And this, along with a whole lot of other data, plays into that fact, that we care a lot more about first and second round rookie picks. Now, we can say that 54% of round 2 rookies see an increase in value from year 1 to year 2. But is that because of wide receivers in round 2, or is it because of running backs in round 2? Or does it not really matter? To help answer this, let's focus on running backs and wide receivers drafted in rounds 1 and 2 in rookie drafts. It's pretty clear that after you get out of round 2, things start to drop off. And we're most concerned about the higher end players anyway whenever we draft. Of all first round rookie draft players in our sample, 33 were running backs and 31 were wide receivers. Of those running backs, about 48% of them saw an increase in startup ADP from their first to second seasons, whereas about 55% of wide receivers saw an increase. I think this is actually kind of meaningful. It does appear that wide receivers are at least a little bit of a safer bet in round 1 of rookie drafts than running backs are when you're looking at the rate that they increase in value year over year. In round 2, that's flipped. Round 2 wide receivers see an increase in year over year startup ADP just 44% of the time. That's 56% for running backs. This actually plays into something that I found a few years back when analyzing the value of rookie picks. I did a study on that, and to be honest, I don't fully believe in what I said back then. That's going to happen. Sometimes I do studies and I realize that there was more to those studies than I was aware of when I put the studies together. But one of the things that was evident and that I still believe in was that round 2 rookie draft running backs, they're kind of awesome. They had a higher than normal hit rate compared to other positions in that round. And we're seeing that with this data as well. I always try to find some sort of logic and form some narrative as to why something like this would be the case. And I think it's that we're enamored with immediate opportunity at running back, which drives up the cost for rookies who are in immediate positions to get touches. A perfect example of this is the absolute worst pick over the last 6 years of rookie drafts when considering cost and when considering how that player then saw his startup value change year 1 to year 2. And that's Samaje Perine. Perine wasn't a special prospect, and he wasn't even a day 1 or day 2 pick. But he landed in Washington where there was an open backfield, or so we thought. Meanwhile, according to My Fantasy League's rookie draft ADP, Perine was selected right around Kareem Hunt and before Alvin Kamara. Both of those running backs had higher draft capital than Samaje Perine did. Draft capital alone, or where those players were selected in the actual NFL draft, that should have told us that something was up. Running backs who were drafted day 2 of the NFL draft, so backs who were drafted in rounds 2 and 3, if you can get one of them in the second round of your rookie draft, you should jump on it. And oftentimes the players who emerge as the awesome values in that area of rookie drafts are the ones who don't seem to have a path to immediate production because someone's in their way. Like David Johnson or Jeremy Hill or Marlon Mack or even Damian Harris. And then of course this year we saw that with Antonio Gibson. The point I'm trying to drive home here is that round 2 rookie running backs, generally speaking, they appreciate in value better than round 2 wide receivers do. At least when looking at it in this binary fashion. And then round 1 wide receivers do so better than round 1 running backs. Now, this doesn't necessarily tell the whole story of what I'm trying to solve here. Thus far, I've only compared rookies to other rookies. We can see that first round rookie draft wide receivers appreciate in value better than running backs do from year 1 to year 2. And that's helpful when looking at how we might want to build through a rookie draft. But what we really should be concerned about is how rookies change in value versus non-rookies. And this is where things start to get really interesting. As I said earlier, not every rookie draft pick has startup ADP. And not every rookie with startup ADP obviously had a high ADP. If we're going to compare how player value changes between rookies and non-rookies, we need to compare them within the same parameters. This is kind of arbitrary, but let's look at this by looking at rookies who were drafted in the top 200 in startup drafts since 2014, and then compare that to the non-rookies who were drafted in the top 200. Now keep in mind, the top 200 is pretty deep in startup drafts. Since 2014, we've had 203 rookies drafted in the top 200 who were also taken in rookie drafts. These players range from the first round to the 4th round of rookie drafts. They were all over the place. We have a wide variety here. Of those 203, the median change in year-over-year startup ADP was about -5, which tells us that a typical change in ADP for those players was to fall in ADP. They decreased their ADP. That's not necessarily shocking considering lower-end players don't hit at a very high rate. And every year, we've got surprise players entering the top 200, and then we've got a brand new rookie class that pushes players down. Now, of the 203 rookies, 97 of them saw an increase in ADP year over year, meaning about 48% of top 200 rookies have increased their year over year value in startup ADP over the last 6 years. Now, let's look at the non-rookies. Of the non-rookies, the median fall in ADP over this time frame has been a little bit over 9. So they've fallen about 9 spots in ADP year over year. That's more than the rookies. And while 48% of the top 200 rookies have seen their value increase year over year, 41% of non-rookies have seen their value increase. That alone gives us a good understanding that these rookies are providing an increase in value at a higher rate than their counterparts. What's even more interesting is what happens with the top 100. Typically, top 100 rookies are selected in the first round of rookie drafts. Over the last 6 years where we have next season data, about 84% of rookies drafted in the top 100 of startup drafts had first round rookie draft ADPs. So let's look at these high-end players. How different is the market value of a rookie in the top 100 versus a non-rookie? Well, I should first say that of all the rookies with top 100 startup ADPs, every single one of them, there were 79 of them, but each one of them had some sort of ADP the following year. Because of non-rookie players retiring or performing poorly, we actually saw 6% of that sample have no real ADP the following year. So there's a difference right there. But here's the thing that probably matters most of all. If you look at the 79 rookies who had their ADP in the top 100 of startup drafts, 53% of them saw their ADP rise from year 1 to year 2. That's up from 48% when you include rookies who had startup ADPs in the 100 to 200 range. Among the non-rookies in the top 100, only 30% of them saw their ADP rise from year 1 to year 2. That's down from 41% when you include the 100 to 200 range. And if you look at the rookies who had top 100 startup ADPs and you compare those ADPs from year 1 to year 2, the median change in ADP among those players is about 5. Meaning typically a rookie who has a startup ADP in the top 100, he's typically increasing that ADP by about 5 the following year. That number was -5 when you include the top 200 players. And then if you look at top 100 players who aren't rookies, their median change is a decrease of 16 spots. Now, to be fair, you might be thinking that the non-rookies are in a slightly worse position than rookies are for a study like this. Maybe it's going to be easier for the rookies to gain an ADP only because it's very hard for players to stay high in rankings year after year after year. If Christian McCaffrey is the 101 one year, that means he has to maintain that the next year. And that's difficult to do. And you're not going to see rookies with that high of an ADP. But if you look at the players ranked 50th through 100th, you get a very similar result. Exactly 50 rookies have had startup ADPs between 50 and 100 over the last 6 years. Of those players, 56% of them had an ADP increase the following season. And then if you look at non-rookies, the rate of increase among players ranked 50th to 100th is still very low at 31%. Now you might be wondering why this is happening. And honestly, the answer is that people age. And dynasty managers don't want older players on their roster. A new rookie class comes in each year as well, and those rookie classes have added about 13 players into the top 100 per class. That's why these numbers aren't significantly higher. So let's take a step back now and think about what all of this means. I want to wrap this up and make it super actionable. When looking at how rookies appreciate within the context of rookie drafts and positions, it seems like the advantage is there for high-end wide receivers, which makes sense. We generally have higher expectations for running backs in year 1 than we do wide receivers. So a running back's value is more likely to be inflated when he's drafted. This doesn't mean that you should avoid first-round running backs in your rookie draft. If you need immediate production, higher-end running backs are a better bet than wide receivers. If you're rebuilding, though, then your goal is to increase your team's overall value from one year to the next. You don't care as much about immediate production. And as a result, you should probably be looking at wide receivers in that first round versus running backs. All the while, it's just generally not a good idea to put too much stock in the immediate opportunity of running backs. This is a learning from before, but it needs to be reiterated with this data. But the bigger takeaway is one that I think a lot of people understood, but maybe not to this level of detail. The data that was presented today really plays into the productive struggle strategy in startup drafts. Gobbling up rookie pick after rookie pick or rookie after rookie. Doing that in a startup will almost undoubtedly increase your team's overall value from one year to the next, unless you're working with an objectively terrible rookie class. And of course, there's more to it than just that. I looked at this from the perspective of rookies versus non-rookies, but you could take this a step further and break down the non-rookie group to look at second-year players, third-year players, and so on. But my big question today was about rookies. And what the data shows is pretty glaring. It's pretty obvious. If you're not looking at production because you don't necessarily need to win right away in your dynasty league, and if you're looking to obtain value in relation to the market, you should be heavily targeting rookies in startup drafts because they definitely appreciate in value from one year to the next at a much higher rate than veterans do. And that rate is probably higher than you even realized.